Welcome to the Whole Note.
Oh,
Today
yeah.
we will be talking about Lin-Manuel Miranda's very first musical, In the Heights. And with me, I have a very special guest who considers himself an In the Heights expert. Mitchell Landon. Mitchell,
yeah, man, got the In the Heights cap.
And got the cap. I'm done with you. I'm
boom. So I know, but like I never have a chance to wear it because it doesn't really fit my head with the hair. So I would break it out. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I'm definitely a person who has heard this musical time and time again. And so many points of my life and in my career with entertainment, this musical just keeps popping up. So it's definitely one that's real special to me.
So Mitchell, go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
All right, so it's so weird. I'm gonna just break fourth wall. Like, so I always hate doing these things because I'm like, do I look at the camera? Do I look at me? Do I look at where are we looking? So if you see my eyes just going around like I'm not on drugs, I just don't know where to put my eyes. So I am a former community theater fella where I met this man, Kenny, at CSM. And then from there, I took my talents professionally to New York as a salsa dancer. I'm also a stand-up comic and, dabble with acting from time to time when I have the opportunity and when there's not a global pandemic.
Now, I have seen pictures of you in karate uniforms. What is that?
So I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a martial art that got really famous by the UFC. If your fans are aware of the UFC, at this point it's become pretty global, especially since they were like the only people to keep throwing on events during the timeline of the pandemic. But I'm an interesting little mix because I'm like a little theater nerd, like dancer boy, but I'm also like football and sports, and it's an interesting mix. I'm like, I'm gonna choke you the mess out, but also, have you heard of Sondheim? He's really talented.
Oh God, I love it. I love it. This is going to be a very interesting podcast, and
I'm loose, man. I'm loose. I'm ready to roll.
All right. You know what? So let's talk about In the Heights really quick, just to sort of talk about what the show is about. So In the Heights, as we said, it was written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who also stars in it as, is it Usnavi?
Usnavi, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And it's literally a show about the people of Washington Heights. And it's so rich in culture and it's so rich in tradition that it's beautiful. Mitchell,
yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, it's the type of show that it can touch you. Like if you've never been to New York, if you're not Latin, if you're not whatever, it has this way of just connecting with people and their personal issues, because they have the main focus on the main character, who's Navi. And so like the world kind of spins around him, but through him and his friends, they kind of tell this story. So it's about these people who are in this neighborhood. It's a poverty neighborhood. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that New York's gentrifying, and this takes place in the early 2000s. And when gentrification and pushing minorities out of their neighborhoods, trying to push them further back away from the city, buying their property, that sort of thing, was the beginning of that. It was the beginning of the Brooklyn turning into a hipster area, and in the Bronx and, Harlem and all that jazz. But yeah, man, it's just about these people's stories and just how they're getting through day to day, and also the universal issues that we all kind of face in some fashion or another.
Love it. Very excellent explanation of the show.
Thanks.
Very, very good.
Thanks.
All right, you know what? Let's just go ahead into the song by song breakdown, because there's so much to unpack in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Just about human nature in itself.
Yep.
All right, so the show opens up with like this, I don't want to say it's like a snare drum. I don't want.
It's a 3/2 clave. So the unique thing about this show is the music itself. So what they do is a lot of people, when you hear Broadway, you kind of think boring music, right? You think just like, you know, like some of the slower songs in West Side Story, or you know, Phantom of the Opera, you know, that sort of thing. Where if you're not a Broadway or theater nerd, it's not gonna appeal to you. But he did something very unique where he took those more traditional stylings that you hear from like a Bernstein or a Sondheim, and then mixed it in with, you know, hip hop. There's a lot of like 90s hip hop influence. You know, if you listen to the lyrics and some of the beats, you'll hear some, you know, Biggie and some Snoop and some of those samples. And then he just, since it's about a Latin neighborhood and in the Heights, he just is always just sprinkling and lacing the music with these Latin rhythms. And to start off the show, it starts off with this ta 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 ta, right? It's these clicks of the 3/2 clave, and that is the foundation of salsa music. And the really cool thing about salsa music is that a lot of people think it's Latin music. It's not. It's American music. Right now, what happened was you took, you know, swing and rock and roll of the 70s, and then mambo was already in the United States. But to kind of bring West Side Story in the mix, the whole point of that show was the Puerto Ricans and the Caribbeans were coming over during the 1970s, and they're also bringing new sounds, right? So they were bringing over mambo, or mambo was here, but they had son and pachanga and all that stuff, fused it with swing, and that's how you get salsa. So it's actually an American-made music, and just highlights the show so well because it's a bunch of Americans who have these huge Latin roots, much like salsa. So it's a perfect way to start the show off. And yeah.
It's funny because when I first heard this, the opening number, it reminded me of Once on This Island, and the song Mama Will Provide, because it has the same exact opening. And I was like, oh, okay. But like with the opening number, you are instantly thrown into this world, and you are introduced to Usnavi, who is the show's narrator. And he is literally guiding you through Washington Heights, and you're introduced to pretty much all of the characters, except for like a few. Yeah. And you get to see their camaraderie with each other. You get to see the rhythm of the neighborhood. And it is a conglomerate of a bunch of people that are coming together just to celebrate life and to, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I always do this. To celebrate life and to give you an insight of what their lives are.
Yeah, you know, like Lin-Manuel Miranda did a wonderful job of making you feel like you were like almost like this Avenue Q aspect of like, hey, welcome to the neighborhood, and kind of makes you feel like you're in this story with them. And technically, this show is technically an opera or operetta, because you know what makes an opera is where the music is what propels the story, versus a musical where it's a play with musical numbers in it, but the music alone doesn't propel the story. And so that's an important thing to remind yourself of when you're listening to this show, and how influential these songs are, because these songs are what are telling you the story. And, you know, In the Heights, the intro brings you into the neighborhood. It tells you who everybody is. It sets up potential problems for down the line, what everyone's dealing with. And he just had a very creative way of taking a textbook introduction, but sprinkling it with, you know, some, you know, creative genius.
So during this opening number, you are introduced to Usnavi's cousin, named Sonny, who is played by Robin de Jesus. You might have known him from the film Camp, and more recently, The Boys in the Band on Netflix. But you also find out that Usnavi is in love with a woman named Vanessa, who works at a hair salon that is owned by Daniela and Carla. We'll get to those two later, because my God, those two.
They're a fun tool in this show to learn and get a little bit more insight in a creative way.
And then you are briefly told a little bit of what the plot of the story is, because Usnavi talks about the lottery, which plays a very, very big part in this show. And also, the heat plays a very big part in this show, which when you're listening to it, you're like, okay, lottery and heat, why are those important? They become important later on. And then you discover that a character named Nina is coming home. And her coming home is a very big deal, and you don't know why. Which brings us into the next song, Breathe.
Oh yeah, Breathe. Such a good song. Such a good song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it, basically with Breathe, the whole show's focused around, just a few individuals. You've got Usnavi, the narrator, his cousin Sonny. You've got the person that took care of them when they were growing up, Abuela, and she's kind of a staple of the community. Then you have the Rosarios, who own the cab company, and that's kind of the only thriving business at the time. And she's the daughter of that guy, and he's worked his whole life to send her to college, and she's coming home, and she has a secret. She dropped out. And so this is her in the song Breathe, just trying to figure out, okay, I'm home. How am I going to tell everybody that I'll let them down?
It is like the story of so many people who leave their hometown, and everybody in the hometown is like rooting for them. That's so much pressure on this poor character, to the point to where she's like, I just can't do this anymore. It's too much for me.
Yeah, and especially in the Latin community, one thing that like a lot of you don't necessarily have to be an immigrant to understand this. If let's say your parents grew up poor, and then they made themselves to success, or maybe they, sent you to college and they had nothing, but it's really big in the Latin community of a lot of people risk their lives to get to this country, right? And, now me personally, I'm American, I'm Puerto Rican, but also white and was raised in a, Southern country area, so I don't really have like those touches to those roots. But, I had an ex-girlfriend of mine whose parents literally, almost died getting here. Her dad was one of the hardest working dudes like I've ever met. Like he would wake up at 9:30 at night, go work overnights as a janitor, get like an hour, maybe like a half hour nap before going to his day job, work there till like 3, go home, eat some dinner, sleep, wake up at 9. And that was just his life. And he put so much pressure on his kids to go to college and succeed, because it's like, yo, we worked for this, and I don't want to see my entire life go into vain. Like, you're the representation of what could be possible for us. And that's what Nina's feeling. She's feeling that pressure of, hey, I'm not me, I'm a symbol, And so now she's got to come home with the bad news that, hey, I dropped out. It was tough. I couldn't cut it. And I know everyone's going to be mad at me for this.
Now, this song is sung beautifully by Mandy Gonzalez. And when I was listening to this song, it's not that I could relate, but I was like, I felt her, not only her shame, but almost her despair.
Yeah, her pain. Yeah. And, it's a beautiful thing, because if you listen to the song, she's like, they're not worried, like, it's like one of the things, like one of the lyrics is, like, they're not worried about me, they're just focused on me to succeed. And because of what she represents, it's like if you've got like a like what LeBron probably meant to Akron, when he got out, it's like, oh man, we can't do this, but we have somebody that can go out and represent our town, and that was the big thing in that song.
And then it leads us into the next song, which is Benny's Dispatch. Benny, played beautifully and wonderfully by Christopher Jackson everybody knows him now as George Washington in Hamilton, but this role was originated by Christopher Jackson on Broadway, and his portrayal of Benny is so innocent and so pure that I absolutely adore it. But it's almost just like the opening song, where it's fast raps, and the rhythm of this song, you're just like, okay, all right.
You're bringing it up, right? You know, because like with you know, In the Heights, the intro, you're kind of up here. You know, it's kind of slow build, but you're like, you know what? And then it ends on this big number, and then Breathe kind of brings you down a little bit because you're sad. You're like, oh, she's going through some heartache, and then you know, Benny's Dispatch is almost like it's almost like comic relief to kind of bring you back up, you know, because Nina comes in, she just sang her sad song and Breathe. She comes in, she's looking for her dad at the taxi depot, and she runs in to this kid that she grew up with who's now running the show, and he was like, yo.
Now I will say, Nina's father is named Kevin, and he's played by John Herrera. And as you said, he owns this taxi company that Benny is pretty much not in charge of, but he has just taken over for that particular moment in time. Yeah. And the funny thing about Benny is he is the only non-Spanish speaking character in the entire show. And that plays a very, very important part later on.
As a non-fluent Spanish speaker in often Spanish communities, I can tell you, it weighs on you. But you know, and that's his thing is, you know, that's kind of like the chip, you know, so like he's a black kid who's, you know, around all these Latin people and, you know, just kind of doesn't fit in, you know, like he's kind of I like to compare him to almost like a Merlin Santana in the Steve Harvey Show type. It's a very specific reference, but he's like this kid who's like always getting into trouble, you know, like, you know, kind of the bad boy, but deep down he's a good kid, you know, and so that's who Benny is. He's just a misunderstood kid who got into trouble as a kid and is just kind of trying to rectify some of the bad, you know, memories that people have of him.
And then, hold on, I think, oh, I did not write this down. Oh, that makes me sad. And then we're introduced to Vanessa, who is played by, who plays Vanessa?
It is Karen Olivo.
There we go. Thank you.
I cheated. I read
That's
it.
the one person I did not write down of all the characters. Yeah. The next song is "It Won't Be Long Now," and
which is amazing. It's hilarious.
It is. It very is. But it's like it's definitely Vanessa's "I Want" song. She dreams of just leaving this place and just being in the upper crust, the upper echelon of society, because she feels that she is too big for just this small little corner of the city.
You know, Lin does a great job in having a lot of themes in this show. You know, having the character who he's the protagonist, he's going to be the head guy, but he lacks self-confidence. You know, almost like a Rick Moranis in Little Shop of Horrors type character, you know, and then you got the person who thinks they're too good for this place, and that, you know, and that's where you find Vanessa is she just wants to get out, you know, or it's almost like I know you had Alicia on for Passing Strange. Hopefully this airs after, but the theme in Passing Strange is this guy thinks by leaving home he's going to leave his problems behind. And that's what Vanessa wants, is she wants to leave home hoping that she's going to get rid of her problems, you know? And so that's where you start to learn about that. And It Won't Be Long Now is she's saying, it won't be long now until I get the F out, you know? And it's a story about her just trying to get a lease downtown away from In the Heights. And it kind of opens up that storyline with her.
Now, Vanessa is also Yusnavi's love interest, but Vanessa is oblivious to Yusnavi, which is very, very sad.
Yeah, it's very much a I don't even know how to put it. Like it's like they got like this Romeo Juliet. It's like when Romeo was in the bushes on the balcony, like, oh man, I really like this chick, you know, and it's just always kind of gazing up at her. But, you know, unlike Romeo and Juliet, like you said, Vanessa's very oblivious to the love that she's getting.
So Vanessa goes into the bodega, the store that Yusnavi and Sonny, his cousin, runs to get a coffee. And Usnavi's just like awestruck, like, hi, how you doing? And Sonny's like, really? So then Sonny takes it upon himself to be like, hey, look, my cousin likes you. Would you take him out on a date? And Vanessa's like, can he dance?
which breeds one of the best lines in the whole show. Is like, you know, she's like, can he dance? And his cousin's like, yeah, like a drunk Cheetah Rivera. And if you guys don't know who Cheetah Rivera is, you know, very talented Latin actress. She was in West Side Story. And so again, making an ode to the past musicals and the people who came before this show. Mm-hmm. But Sonny and Benny are, Usnavi's best friends, and they're always like, yo, just take your shot. And Sonny's like, you know what, he's not going to do it, so I will. And so this is where you start to find the catalyst between Usnavi and Vanessa, because finally it's acknowledged, hey, he likes you,
And so, of course, Vanessa says, okay, cool. And so then she goes and works in the salon. Oh, no. She doesn't work in the salon. She goes to the salon just to get away. No, she doesn't work at the salon. It's Nina who goes to the salon later.
Yeah, she works at the salon, yeah. It's, they tell you that, and It Won't Be Long Now, where she talks about, just, cutting hair day by day, and all that jazz.
And then we get to the next song, which to me is one of the most heartbreaking songs. And it's sung by Nina's father, Kevin. Yes. So Nina comes and tells her parents that, hey, she's not going to go back to, well, she...
I don't think she tells me yet.
Not yet. Yeah. And Kevin feels just completely useless, which the title of the song, and I'm gonna get it wrong, is Intuli. I'm on it.
Inutil.
Inutil. Thank you.
Yeah. It means useless. Yeah. So like his whole thing is like, okay, so he's worked his whole life trying to get his daughter to college. He's finally got his daughter to college, but guess what? Rent's going up in the neighborhood. He's having a hard time keeping his business open. He doesn't know how he's going to pay for college for her. Finally has her there. So all the weight of his responsibilities are on his shoulders, and he's just like, I'm a man. I want to provide, and a big thing that you learn in this song is you learn more about Kevin, and, he, worked the sugarcane fields with his father as a boy in Puerto Rico. And, his father was like, hey, you're never because Kevin wanted to leave and better himself. He dreamed, much like Vanessa, of leaving and bettering himself. And that's a, big theme with, poor Latin people is bettering yourself. And his dad was like, no, you're a farmer. I'm a farmer. My dad was a farmer. That's all you're ever going to be, So on top of letting his family down, he's also letting himself down, he feels, because he wanted to prove to his dad that he can make it in America and become something bigger than, his family's past.
One of the interesting parts of this song is he states that he doesn't want to become his father, but he feels that is as if he is becoming his father.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. He just wants...
I don't want to get a little bit premature here, but I don't know if it's true. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Mark Anthony plays Kevin's father in the movie.
It's Jimmy Smits.
Mark Anthony's not? I thought Mark Anthony was in it. No? All right.
No. I looked this up as well. I was like, who's playing him in the movie? And when I saw it was Jimmy Smits,
I'm saying his father. I think Mark Anthony plays Kevin's father in the movie.
Ooh. That's okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about. I thought you meant that.
And for those of you who don't know, Mark Anthony is an all-time great salsa artist, singer. Used to date J-Lo, maybe beat her. I don't know. So we're not going to talk about his character. But singing-wise, he was very good.
Oh yeah. We went there. We went there. It's
I the cheese mate, and we're gonna get there with the next couple songs. We're talking about Carla and Daniela in the salon. It's hard. It's part of the community, right? It's part of the Latin community. It's talking shit. There.
And that goes right into the next song, No
Yeah,
Medica, which is literally my favorite song in the show. Because it clearly sets the tone for these women and their interaction with each other at this hair salon, and it sort of brings you back to the comedy of the show, because you just had this sort of sad song with Kevin, and now you're back in the comedy with No Mediga. Now, Daniela, who is the owner of the shop, is played by Andrea. There we go. Andrea Burns. And Carla is played by Janet Dacal. And Nina comes into the salon just to sort of get away from her family, to sort of see Vanessa, because they're like sort of friends, and just the camaraderie of all the girls together. And Daniela is literally the town gossip, and that's what I love about her, because she's just dishing out on everyone. One of my favorite lines was, "Oh, I heard that Benny had a big car." I was like, "Whoa, okay, yeah, you know."
No, like, and the way they do it in the show is so good, because like, you know, I hear that Benny's got quite a big honk taxi, and like it's just really playful the way they did it. And again, like, so, you know, Lin-Manuel Miranda is so good with these stereotypes of like the girls like gossiping, you know, like, you know, because I don't know if it's you know, because oftentimes a lot of Latin people are very religious, you know, and the stereotype of like gossiping like church women, and you know, they just follow that to the T, man. They're just, anything that could happen, oh my god, you know, like no me diga, you know, like, you know, oh yeah, I can't hear. Yeah, that whole song, not only is it about the gossip, but it also is giving you that deeper insight. You know, they're almost like the three women in Hercules, who are kind of letting you know into the story what's going on, or like the, you know, the singers in, you know, Little Shop again. You know, they're like, hey, guess what? Nina likes Benny. You know, Benny likes Nina. That's something that we haven't really had to the forefront yet. You know, we thought maybe earlier in the show, maybe there's something going on. Now we're confirming it. And okay, cool. Vanessa, hey, Usnavi just doesn't want to take you out. He's in love with you, man. Like, what do you know? And so you're getting a deeper layer to this neighborhood that you weren't getting before.
And it also just shows, like, while they're doing this, they're also cutting hair, they're doing hair and everything. And just their mannerisms, their vocal tones. It is one of those, as if, yeah, like you said, it is the chatty, gossipy church ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing is sacred to them.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah.
So towards the end of the song, you find out Nina drops the bombshell to everyone that she dropped out. And Daniela's like, no me diga. I was like, whoa, I can't.
But it's still, it's a good thing to keep in mind, though, that at this point in the show, it's still a secret from her parents.
Mm-hmm.
So she still doesn't know how to tell her parents, you know, this bad news, you know.
And then we get into the next song, which is probably the song of the show. Because whenever somebody thinks of In the Heights, they think of this particular song, and that's 96,000. Yusnavi, Benny, Sonny, and Graffiti Pete, who is quite literally my favorite character, because he's not like a throwaway character. He's just like, hey, I'm Graffiti Pete. And he's played by Seth Stewart in the original Broadway cast. Mm-hmm. They discover that someone who bought a lottery ticket from them won 96,000, and everyone is just like, oh, what would we do with $96,000? And
classic.
It's the thing is, it's not a small amount. It's enough to change someone's life.
Yeah.
And my favorite part in the song is Vanessa, Her little part.
Oh yeah, no, it's yeah. So that the whole 96,000 premise, again, with each song you start to get a little bit more into people's mindsets. What would they do with this money, right? So our main character Usnavi, his whole thing is he wants to leave, and he's originally from the Dominican Republic, and his parents died when he was younger. That's why he's getting taken care of by abuela. And that's why he's running this store. He inherited it from his parents. So his dream is to get back to where his family's from, because again, we're all trying to just get away from our problems and hoping a new destination might answer that for us, right? And so for him, he's thinking, okay, I don't have my parents, but if I go back to my roots, maybe that'll help fill that void for me, so that's what he wants from it. Benny, you find out that he wants to run his own business one day, and this money could help him get to that. And a big thing that he talks about is like, maybe then I'll get respect from my boss. Maybe then I'll get respect from the people who don't think I'm good. So, Benny not only wants to, be rich because he's tired of being poor, but he also desperately wants people's respect, and Vanessa, her big urge of getting out, and you start to find what everybody's deeper desires are, what kind of makes them tick. And the rest of the show starts to build on whose desires are going to become realities.
And with this actual song, you not only see everybody's inner fears and you see everybody's inner wants, but you also see that everybody just wants, like there are certain people who want to help the city like expand and flourish. And then there's certain people who are like, I just want to leave you all behind. I am done with you. I want to start my own life. Yeah. And that's a very interesting juxtaposition, because there are people who are selfless, and then there's people who are selfish.
Yeah.
With what they would do with the money.
Yeah, and that's a really good a really good turning point from the from the show. It really, again, like I said, it really highlights, the rest of the show, and it really sets up, because every show has its problems, right? So you've got your beginning, your problem, you've got your journey, your climax, and your decline or resolution, right? So every show follows that format roughly. So, after 96,000, we're no longer in the introductory period of this show. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of what this show is and what the story is really about, and how we're going to start to solve some of the problems, and what we're going to do with the information that we got from the first part of this musical so far.
Which leads us into the next song, which it's so pretty. It's so beautiful. The translation is patience and faith, but it's I'm going to say it wrong. Paciencia and fe.
Paciencia y fe.
Paciencia y fe, which is sung by Abuela Claudia. I can't talk today. Yeah. Who was also played by Olga Merendez. So, little quick story on Claudia. So she's not truly like Usnavi's abuela, but she's the person that took him in after both his parents died, and you find out how they died later on in the show. Yeah. And she's sort of like everyone's abuela.
It's just like when you have like that one house in the neighborhood, or wherever where all the kids would go to, and that was her place, And also, little shout out, I got my Cuba Che Guevara in the background over here for Miss Claudia. Because fun fact, if you look at the timetable, so like with this song, basically you learn about her and who she is, and you find out that when she was a little girl, her and her family, her and her mother fled from Cuba, right? And around the time that they fled from Cuba, it would have been when Fulgencio Batista had control of Cuba. And for those of you who aren't familiar, everyone knows Fidel, right? Well, Fulgencio Batista was the guy before him that Fidel kicked out because he was too much of a mean dictator. And the irony, as years to come, will you'll see that. But either way, so I just thought it was funny because I had this up here before then. But the fact that Claudia and her mother fled from that regime to come to America for a better life was a big part of that story. Again, getting back to those roots.
Now, Claudia is singing the song while she's feeding birds. Such an old lady move to do.
That's her thing, man.
And she's talking to her mother, trying to figure out what to do and how to proceed. And you're like, what is going on? What is going on? And then you find out she's the one that hit the lottery. And you're like, oh, like honestly, of all the people in this show, she would be the most deserving of it.
Yeah.
Just because of who she is and what she represents as a person.
And as the show progresses, you find out from each character what she meant to them and how she had a hand in their life. You know, it wasn't just Usnavi and Sunny that she was kind of rearing as a kid or taking care of, you know, and as the story progresses, you start to realize how much of a fabric of the community of Abuela Claudia is.
And so towards the end of the song, she's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go and buy a loaf of bread and just go about her day. And I'm like, yeah. That is just selfless and simple. And I love Abuela Claudia. I love her so much.
She's amazing.
And that brings us into the next song, When You're Home. And it's a wonderful back and forth song between Nina and Benny as they're talking about their childhoods. And as you were saying earlier, that about Benny's just crazy, rough childhood. One of the things that they talked about was Benny would always break this fire hydrant, get soaked in it, and as soon as he heard the sirens, he'll go running. And the first place that he'll run to was always Rosario's. And her father Kevin was always like reluctant to bring him in, but he's like, "Come on, get in here before the police come and get you."
Yeah, you know, so like there's a little bit of a history here, and this is also where Benny's kind of getting the cojones to, you know, open up the romance door with Nina a little bit, you know, and kind of giving her, because right now she's still plagued with this problem. She hasn't told her parents yet, right? And so Benny is now acting as a source of escape and comfort for her during this time of discomfort. And, you know, she starts to get reminded of the old neighborhood and what it meant to her and the memories and, you know, how important this community really is to her when she was one of the ones who tried to run away thinking that it would solve her issues, you know. So that's a theme where you start to kind of get into the details of, you know, the impact of just trying to get away and not truly dealing with the demons that you have to sort through.
And their little back and forth with each other is very playful and yet loving. Like you can tell that these two forces of nature are about to collide and combine. And it's the beginning of their sort of love story that cultivates, especially towards the end of Act 1. Then we get into the next song, Piagua. Okay, so this is such a great song. It's a great, short, simple song, and it's literally the Piagua guy who comes in, and he is literally just selling like frozen ice.
Yeah, it's like a, you know, it's like a snow cone type of deal.
Snow cone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a snow cone with flavoring, you know, but they're Latin, so there's like mango flavoring, you know. Yeah, man, this song's like literally it's just him with his little cart down the street, just yelling "Piragua, Piragua," like come buy it. And you know what that man is a symbol of relief, a temporary relief, right? So you talked about earlier how heat plays a big factor in this show, right? Now, there was a big heat wave going through New York at that time, right? And these people are poor. They live in, you know, 3-4 floor walk-ups. They don't have AC. You know, it's just rough, man. That asphalt just kicks up the heat, man. It's all muggy. People are cramped into each other. So, you know, the Piagua, man, it's a temporary relief. It's a temporary escape from all their issues. It's a satiating thing. And so it's a source of happiness, but also what you see is one of the things that the Piagua guy likes to talk about is how he doesn't know how much longer he's going to be able to survive as a business, because Mr. Softy, the ice cream man, and for those of you who don't know who Mr. Softy is, it's an ice cream truck that pours soft serve ice cream. And so it's almost a key into, hey, the corporate money is coming into this neighborhood and pushing out the small business. And it's just another reminder that, hey, our neighborhood's not going to be our neighborhood much longer if we let these businesses keep taking over. And so that's another theme of, hey, do we come together as a community, or do we worry about ourselves and trying to better our personal situation? And so that's another good source of that song.
And as you pointed out before, it's the gentrification of the community, and he's fighting against it. He is literally the representation of the working class man that is still. Yeah. Now, the Piagua guy is played wonderfully by Eliseo Roman, and he is literally a joy. A joy.
Yeah, he's a fun character.
Now, the next sort of moment that happens before the next song is you have the Rosarios are hosting a dinner, and Nina's there, Kevin's there, and I want to say Vanessa is there as well.
It's the only part of the show that doesn't have a musical behind it.
Right.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Hamilton was the same way. Hamilton, it was all Hamilton except for one part that wasn't a musical number, and I think it was also a dinner or like it was something like, I can't remember, but I was a little drunk when I saw Hamilton, but it's neither here nor there. But yeah, so this is a very important thing, because now you're starting to see some things get out on the table, pun intended.
And this is where Nina finally confesses that she drops out of school. And this is where Kevin makes a confession that he has sold his business so that way he can pay for Nina's tuition. And you're like, oh crap, okay.
Yeah.
And like that hurts Benny, because like he wanted to take over the business, but Kevin was like, the Rosario's business is always going to be in the Rosario family. You are not family. And I'm like, ooh, okay, Kevin.
Yeah.
Now his wife Camilla is like, she's dumbfounded by all of this, because this is like, she just got all this news at one time, and she hasn't been, and she it's not that she is silenced, but everybody keeps talking over her, but she has her moment later on.
Yeah, no, she definitely does have her moment later on, because one thing that you know, the stereotypical Latin mother, you know, even though, like, you know, I know we've come a long way in modern times in America, but you know, in Latin American households, in Asian American households, and basically anyone who wasn't born in America, you know, the male, it's very traditional where the male is the head of the household. However, the mom's running the show. You know what I mean? So for her to be complete, for them to not be a team, and for him to, you know, lie about this information to find out that his daughter's lying. Also, a big thing during this dinner is, yeah, no one's dumb. They know that Nina and Benny have a thing for each other. So that's a real big source of animosity between the father, Kevin, and Benny. It's not just about the business. It's, hey, you're not good enough for my daughter, you know? And so that also, you know, creates this big explosion of lies and deceit. You know, the mom's not getting listened to. The dad feels like a failure. He's been lied to, finds out that he's been doing all this for nothing because his daughter's not going to school anyway. And on top of that, she's dating some dude, or is interested in this guy who she has no business being with, because he's a loser in the eyes of Kevin, but also sees a little of himself in him, you know? And so there's that as well. You know, a lot of classic themes that you see throughout, you know, Shakespeare and modern day TV and movies and plays and all that jazz.
So Nina ends up leaving the house because she's completely done with her family. Because Benny ends up just storming out. And so you are
kind of kicked out. It's
yeah, he is kind of kicked out.
And then, go.
And then we are almost like thrust into this club scene.
Oh, my favorite.
And this entire scene is is no, well, there's minimal singing, but it's mostly a huge dance number. And it's the progression of both couples of Usnavi and Vanessa and Nina and Benny, and then you have the other characters sort of sprinkled in. And I want to say Usnavi gets jealous of Vanessa because Vanessa's dancing with some other guy. Benny is drunk at the bar. Nina's like, come talk to me. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. You're Rosario. And I'm like, what in the world?
So this scene, it paints a good picture, I would say, like Vanessa and Usnavi, because it's not necessarily, that Usnavi is jealous, but like they're at this point where it's like, I don't really know what we are yet. He's nervous. He's trying to make everything perfect. Like, oh my goodness, are you okay? Like dinner? You want something to drink? What kind of drink do you want? He's just being that overbearing thing. And then some dude comes up to ask Vanessa to dance. Now, if you guys ever go to here's a bit of a culture thing, right? Is that Latin clubs with salsa, bachata, merengue, like all that stuff, much different than your American clubs where it's just bumping and grinding. Because if you're gonna dance salsa, you need to be skilled. You kind of need to know what you're doing to be on the dance floor. Now, not to say that there's not sleazy dudes who just want to get up on girls. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is just because your girl dances with another guy, it's not necessarily a big deal, right? Partner dancing, there's a lot of rotation between partners, right? But what this kind of represents is this dude asked Vanessa to dance, and it's going to be her first glimpse of like, is this like a date, or is this two friends going, nah, what are we doing, And she's kind of, I'm inferring here that she kind of wants Usnavi to kind of man up a little bit because he's been kind of timid the whole night, trying to be an overpleaser. And so this guy comes out, hey, you want to dance? And she's like, and then before she can even say anything, he's like, oh, it's cool if you want to. She was like, are you sure you don't mind? He's like, no, it's fine, right? And then so that's when Usnavi goes to the bar. Benny's drunk. He's like, yo, what are you doing? How are you going to let, also Benny's not Latin. So he's thinking with this American, oh, your girl's dancing with somebody else. And of course, Usnavi's insecure about it anyway. So, now we're starting to put a little ripple in this potential relationship out of nothing, just based off of insecurities. And then Nina comes into the club, and then Benny, he's a little bit drunk, and he's like, you know what? Forget you. You're the whole reason why I lost my job today. You're the whole reason that, when really he's, upset about the personal thing of like, hey, I don't know if we're going to have a future together, So there's also that aspect to it as well.
So then right after that, a fight breaks out between, who is it? Benny and some random dude for dancing with Nina, right?
I believe so. I'm a little hazy, yeah.
And as the fight is going, all of a sudden there's a blackout.
Ew, yes.
Because the heat is too intense, and the entire city, like all the power.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. Yeah, so like if you guys kind of know your history, this show was set around the 2000 era where there was a heat wave and there was the rolling blackouts in New York. So that's what they're dealing with here. Is now we got a blackout out of nowhere. Everybody's hot. Everyone's mad. Everyone's angry, right? So now we're kind of getting to that point. Like I said, Lin followed that classic, storyline telling or structure where it's like, okay, cool. What bad's gonna happen? In every movie, something bad's gotta happen so we can kind of get to the rest of our story. And now this is our climactic point of the show, which leads us into right before the end of the first act.
Blackout. I love this song because it's so chaotic. The energy of this song is very, very chaotic. Where everyone is trying to find each other. Sonny is coming in and saying, hey, people are saying that they're about to loot and riot, so we need to protect the store. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. This is a very creative song, like vocally and technically, because you have all these different voices singing different things.
Yeah.
And then you have like the main sort of, I'm gonna call it the chorus, that is saying, look at the fireworks, look at the fireworks, because Sonny is setting off fireworks so people can A, see something, see where they're going, and B, to thwart off anybody who's trying to break into their store.
And in terms of, creative writing, like Sonny's like, hey, I'm gonna grab a bat, and then, oh, I got a couple of Roman candles, we can distract the vandals. Like, just a very creative way of, putting into the lyrics, what's happening here. Lin is, next to none when it comes to not just having, lyrics that rhyme because he's rapping, but also helping propel a story and making it make sense,
And then towards the very end of the song, Nina ends up finding Benny and they reconcile.
Yeah, they
But
do.
Amongst all of this chaos that's in the city, Nina and Benny had their first kiss. And that's just pretty much how Act 1 ends. And it's like, oh, okay. And then we get into Act 2. The opening of Act 2, Sunrise.
Is so good.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful song. And it's Nina and Benny who are literally living in their own little bubble for this moment in time, waking up from the previous night. And you see that Nina...
Let's be honest, we know what they were doing. You know what I mean?
Brown chicken, brown cow. Exactly.
Some things changed that night. Plots thickened.
That's not the only thing that thickened.
Oh. But like all jokes aside though, anyone who's been in a relationship, sex will be something that, will make it more intense, on an emotional scale or, anything. So, along with all the stuff that they're going through, okay, cool. Now we have a deeper connection with each other because of, the physical nature that we just endured.
Now, to put this into perspective really quick, so both of these characters are around 19 years old.
Maybe a little bit older.
Well, go ahead.
One of the, because Benny grew up with Usnavi, and Usnavi's a little bit older than Nina. So the fact, like when you're in the club scene, he's like, "Yo, who let you in?"
True.
21 or over 21, and then she's still a little bit younger. So she was kind of like that class below. So I mean, not that big of a difference, but it is kind of prudent for the story.
And so you have Nina teaching Benny just very poignant and random Spanish words that Benny is repeating. And it's like a teacher and a student, and she's relishing in the fact that he is so interested in learning how to speak Spanish. And when he's saying it wrong, she's repeating it, saying it correctly. This song almost reminds me of, there's a song in Hamilton where his wife is teaching their son not Spanish.
French. Yeah.
It's almost like that.
Yeah, and so what's cool with this, with this song is, they're kind of doing a back and forth, like round robin type deal. Cause like, you hear the song in the background and then it starts going, right. And she starts off simple. It's like esquina. And then he's like, oh, corner. And then she's like, tienda, store, bombilla, light bulb. And then she's like, are you sure? I'm sure. But, so it starts off pretty innocuous, right? It doesn't really mean much, right? And then some of the words that she's throwing out later on in the show starts to show the build of their relationship, you know. So you've got, you know, are you sure? I'm sure, you know. And then she was talking about, you know, now he's starting to ask some questions like, hey, how do you say hold me? And she was, you know, like, how do you say promise me? How do you say love me? You know. And then she was like, I'm a man, you know, like, and perhaps I do, you know. And then the song starts to progress from, now we're having a Spanish lesson to now we're talking about us. And then it gets into the deep issue that Benny's scared about is, you know, like, I don't know what to do. And then she's translating what he's saying, you know. He's like, I don't know what to do now that I've found you, you know, what will he say when he sees me around you, he being her father, you know. So now it's like, okay, we're a thing, we like this, but how's this gonna work? And so now we're starting to get from that, you know, it's so funny, like having the sunrise. Okay, now that we've gotten through this magical moment, now reality's kind of setting in. And what's that really gonna mean? You know? And so that kind of builds us up for, you know, the rest of the story of not only just them as a couple, but also, you know, the rest of the community.
And then towards the end of the song, you find out that oh God, Nina's father, Kevin, is looking for her. Like
she has been home all night. There's been a blackout. There's looting. He's a concerned father, you know.
Exactly.
And he hasn't really seen her since the fight at the dinner, so it's understandable.
And then we get into the next song, Hundreds of Stories. Okay, I say it about every song because like every song in the show is freaking beautiful, but this song, it's Abuela telling Yusnavi, hey, so I won the lottery and I'm giving a third to you. I'm keeping a third to myself, and the rest of it is going to Sonny. And she is telling Yusnavi that, you know, remember all those stories I've been telling you? I want you to go back home to the Dominican Republic. And he's like, oh, okay. And then so she starts telling him all these stories about when they were younger and how she was telling him stories about her past. And my favorite part of this song, it's so cute, it's so innocent. And it was when Yusnavi's parents were coming over to America.
Yeah,
they saw a boat.
Yeah.
And that boat was the name of their child. And it's like, oh, that'd be a great name, Yusnavi. And Yusnavi's like, yeah, it was U.S. Navy, but.
Yeah. Which I was confused the first time I saw that script for In the Heights. I was like, you know, because if I thought about Usnavi, like, you know, I spelt it in my head how you would like in Spanish, like USNAVI or something, right? But then it was like U.S. Navy, and then like you got the joke in the story. But yeah, you know, and so that's now it's like, okay, we have this money. Now the plot thickens, right? So you got two staples of the community here: Abuela, who is the glue for everybody, and you got Lin-Manuel Miranda's character, Usnavi, who owns the store in the community. And so the two of them are going to leave and go to the Dominican Republic, right? And so now two staples of this community are going to leave. And so, of course, when people hear that, they're like, yo, what? You know? And so that creates another dilemma in this situation of like, okay, well, what's everyone else going to do, you know?
And it's also funny because like if they were to truly leave, everybody else would pretty much follow suit, and that little corner of their world would not be what it is.
It would
and it's also during this song that you also find out how Yusnavi's parents died. They ended up getting really, really sick with pneumonia, and they both passed away when he was a little child.
They got that COVID. Oh.
And you're just like, oh, that's so freaking sad. So it brings us into the next song. And I call this the "Shut Up, I'm Talking" song.
That's exactly it.
So Nina comes back home, and Benny brings her, and Kevin's like, "Where have you been? What have you been doing?" And Kevin is upset that Nina is with Benny, and Camila is like, "You know what? Enough is enough." Hence the title of the song, "Enough." Mm-hmm. And she literally just reads him all for filth. She's like, "Look, you need to stop doing this. You need to stop doing this. You need to listen to your father. You need to stop being such a pressure to your daughter. And you both need to fix whatever this is that you need to fix."
Yeah. And you know, one thing that the mom really does a really good service of is she kind of, her whole problem is that all the deceit and all the lies, right? And so, you know, of course she's mad at her husband for not telling her about the business. You know, of course she's mad that, you know, he's being so protective of his daughter, you know, with Benny. But also a big thing that she's upset with Nina is she was like, "Look, I'm not mad that you dropped out of college. I'm mad that you didn't feel comfortable enough to be honest with me." You know, and so one of the things that she lies out is, hey, we all have problems here, but if we have each other, these problems aren't that significant because we can get through them together. And it's a really good theme that we start to present in this story that can not just affect the Rosario household, but could affect the entire community. It's like, look, we all got problems, but it doesn't mean anything. You know, you can get over whatever, you know, so like if we have each other and we'll be okay. You know, and so that's where another thing where you really start to see, you know, so, and it also gives Nina a big peace of mind because now she sees why her dad's putting so much pressure on her, you know, and now she's feeling a little bit relieved because, hey, all right, everything's out on the table, man. So I don't have to carry this burden with me anymore. And so, you know, for one of the first times in the show, we're starting to see some wounds being healed, and some real growth and betterment for some situations that were really detrimental for a lot of our main characters.
And also the thing I love about Camila is she almost grounds the family, because the father is always up there, the daughter's always up here, and she is calm, cool, and collective until she is needed to say something about themselves. Yeah. And it's such a wonderful moment in the show for this one character who is also not in the movie. I just realized that. And I'm like, what? Then how is this moment going to happen?
So she's not the mom in the movie?
No, like, the mom is not in the movie.
Would she like die when she was a kid or something?
I have no idea. I guess we'll find out on Friday.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing with the movie that I feel really confident in, is that, you know, anytime your favorite show gets put into a movie, you always want to talk smack about it, you know, or whatever. But, you know, Lin-Manuel Miranda literally had his hand in the making of this movie the entire step of the way. So any kind of decision that got made, he okayed it, you know. So that, you know, so there's something I don't personally agree with. That, you know, that's where my head's gonna go. It's like, you know what? Didn't know about this, and you know, he helped make this choice, so you know, it must have been for a good reason, you know. And so that's just where my head's going to be anytime I see something in the movie that wasn't part of the show.
And he's also in the movie. He plays the Piagua guy, and that makes me so happy. And then we get into Carnival De Barrio.
Hell yeah.
And it is almost like the opening number, where it's upbeat, it's lifting, because Daniela is trying to encourage everybody, like, look, yeah, there's a heat wave, yeah, there's a blackout, but you know what? We have community. Let's just have a party.
Yeah, you know, and so we again, that theme that Camila has of like, yo, if we're in this together, we're going to be okay. And that's where the community is starting to realize with, you know, Carnival De Barrio is we're going to do this together. And so a big theme of this thing is representing where you come from, right? So like, Like one of the chants from the chorus that you keep hearing is, que bonita bandera, right? Which is, like, how beautiful is that flag, right? And so you got people repping the Puerto Rican flag, the Cuban flag, the whatever flag, Dominican flag, and it's all talking about like where they come from, but also celebrating that they're now all here together, and so you really get that sentiment from Carla, Daniela's sidekick, where she was like, oh, my father's Dominican, Cuban, my mother's from Chile and PR, which means I'm a Chile Dominican Rican, but I always say I'm from Queens, and so, she's like, yeah, I'm all these things, but like, I'm from here, we're all from here. We're all part of this community. And so that's where you start to get that uprise in the show of like, we're in this together,
And it's during this number where once again, Daniela is playing a plot point, and she's like, Vanessa, why don't you tell Usnavi that you like him too? Usnavi, why don't you tell Vanessa that you like her? Why don't y'all just stop being little and just get together? Yeah. Everybody knows this. And then Usnavi is like, telling Sonny that, hey, I might be going to the Dominican Republic, and Sonny's like, wait, what? Why? And he gets upset, and then Usnavi's like, no, don't worry about it, because Abuela is leaving money for you as well, and he's like, oh, okay then, and it's a comedic song that sort of ties up, not really ties up, but sort of just further develops the storyline between Usnavi and Vanessa.
Yeah, and Lynn's still coming up with that good thing of like, enough, boom, hard, deep, getting us down. And then Carnival De Barrio, it's like, now we're bringing it back up.
Which, once again, he brings us back up just to bring us back down.
Just to bring us back down.
With the shortest song in the show, sung by Kevin, Atención. This song is literally heartbreaking, literally, and all it is just Kevin saying over the dispatch that Abuela Claudia has passed away.
Yeah,
and it's such a gut punch because you weren't expecting it. No one was expecting it.
It's like finally things are going right, and then it's like in West Side Story where Maria's all in love and happy and home, and then Benito's died, man.
The thing is, though, her death caused so many other people to go, wait, I need to change the way I'm thinking about things.
Yeah, it just showed, because it got everybody reminiscent of the neighborhood and what it means to them. And, they realized that, hey, she was a much more important part of my life than I thought. And that's straight parallel with, hey, this neighborhood's much more part of my life than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, cool. I'm running my own show. I'm doing my own thing here, but I wouldn't be anything if I didn't see, Snavi at the bodega every day, or if, Benny wasn't, picking me up to, take me to wherever, and so it really was a concrete notion for a lot of people that, hey, this community is something special.
And that leads into the next song, which is the memorial song. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to butcher this name again. Is it Alabanza?
Alabanza, yeah.
Alabanza, which I did look up what it meant, and it meant praise. And I was like,
yeah. Well, I love the way that Usnavi in the song, like his definition for it, it's, Alabanza, which means to raise this thing to God's face and to sing quite literally praise to this. Like just the way he described, I'm like, you should write Webster dictionaries because that was beautiful.
Very beautiful. And everyone has their moment in this song. And I love how this song is mostly Spanish. It's mostly Spanish with like Usnavi having very like little English parts in it. And it's heartbreaking. It's a memorial for the woman who.
So with the Spanish aspect of the song, and I didn't brush up on the musical as well as I should have. I'm sorry. I didn't have all that time. I listened to certain parts, but so it's been a while for anyone who's like, this guy's misspeaking. But to my remembrance is that Alabanza, it's a a prayer, you know, because like throughout people are kind of you know, singing alabanza, you know, like they're praying, you know, so like throughout, like they're like, hey, Señor, you know, and so that's how you address God, like when you're praying, and so it's, you know, it's a memorial definitely, but more it's a prayer to God of like, hey, take care of her. What are we, you know, which is a little bit more of a what's the word? Not solemn. What's the word? Somber. More of a somber presence than just a memorial, I would think, you know, because it's people reflecting within, and you really feel the heartbreak of, you know, the community.
And then the next scene, which is also leads into a song, you have Yusnavi and you have Nina like packing up boxes of inside of Abuela's house, and they're going through photo albums. And the song is entitled "Everything I Know," and Nina picks up an album and starts looking through it, and she sees her high school graduation in it, and then she looks at it and she looks through it, and she sees that her name is starred, and she sees like a picture, and you just come to realize that something as small as that to Nina was really, really big for Abuela Claudia. And we all have that one person that is in our lives that is a collector of memories, that when that person passed and you go through all of that stuff, you're like, oh, wow. So this person, something that I thought would be completely useless and completely non-important, this moment was important to this person.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to point out that, you know, Nina had no relation to Abuela, you know, like
none at all.
She had both of her parents. She, you know, had all that, but you know, sometimes Abuela would watch her after school, you know, while her parents are dealing with the business and stuff like that, you know. So, and this is a lady who doesn't have any kind of biological attachment to this kid. She's not her godmother. She's not her caretaker, you know. But for her, like, you know, Abuela Claudia like barely spoke English. She wasn't educated, right? But she would tell Nina, hey, pay attention, you know, like, what is this? Okay, cool, do it again, right? And she would like push her to be a better student. And, you know, then years later, Nina's the smart one who got into Stanford and went to California, you know, across the country. And, you know, and if it wasn't for Abuela's like, you know, hand and rearing her, you know, that wouldn't happen. And it's also a reflection of Nina's like, oh, it's not just that people are looking at me as a symbol for something better. They believed in me as well. And maybe I gave up too early. And now you start to hear Nina start to think about, oh, you know what? I kind of owe it to the people. I need to stop thinking of myself in this situation as a burden. And I also need to realize that I do have responsibility to these people who loved and supported me, because this stuff is important to them as well. You know, and now she starts to see it from their perspective, not as just like this nagging type of feeling that she was getting before.
And it's at this moment where Nina's like, okay, I'm gonna go back to school just to honor the memory of Abuela Claudia. And it's just a nice feel-good moment, but at the same token, you're just like, it's still a sad and somber moment as well.
It's bittersweet, you know? Like at the end of Brokeback Mountain, where Enos Del Mar, for the first time in his life, gives up an opportunity for work to go to his daughter's wedding, you know? And just like you see growth of the character, but it's sad because he's mourning the loss of Jack Twist. You'll never guess what I watched yesterday.
The fact that you brought up Brokeback Mountain during a podcast for In the Heights, Mitch, I love you. I love you.
It's funny. Like, what's funny is my girlfriend, you know, Jamie, but maybe everyone else doesn't know. Wasn't necessarily like it was kind of her idea, but just because I've been like, yo, you haven't seen this yet, and like, it's just that's just the theme in our relationship is the stereotypical gay stuff is the stuff I push. Like, if there's a Nicholas Sparks film to be watched in this household, she's not suggesting it. She hates Nicholas Sparks. It's annoying.
Now,
anyway.
before we get to the next song, there's a little mini scene where Vanessa is not planning to move, but like she's already packing up stuff to move to her upper echelon apartment in Manhattan.
She found out that she got the apartment, her lease went through, everything's finally good to go.
And then you find out who co-signed for her. And it's, to me, it's a very touching moment because it shows that, this person believes in her. And the person who co-signed was Daniela. Granted, Usnavi persuaded her to do it, but Daniela co-signed for Vanessa's apartment. And like that took Vanessa aback because she's worked for this woman for years. And now this woman has literally blessed her life again by co-signing for an apartment for her.
Yeah.
So then we get into Piagua reprised. And it, to me, this particular song is almost like a ha 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 song because the Mr. Softly truck breaks down, and now the Piagua guy is the only one that is selling what was it? Frozen snow cones,
sugary treats for the community
to everyone, and it's still during a heat wave, and he's like making so much money, and he even says he's like, yeah, now that Mr. Softy's truck is broken down, I'm the only man that's in town. I was like, you go ahead, Piagua guy.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's also a symbol of, hey, if we stay persistent, we can keep this community going. And which, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but that leads us into kind of like the next song of that same ideal.
Champagne.
One of my favorites.
Same.
Just from an acting standpoint, and just from how simple this scene. So the entire scene of this show is, so Usnavi and Vanessa, not the show, the song, I'm sorry. Usnavi and Vanessa had this thing of like, hey, if you leave, I'll buy you a bottle of cool champagne. Champagne's the luxury, the high end type of symbol, right? Like you made it, And so they want to celebrate. So Usnavi's leaving as well, and he's getting out. So Vanessa surprises him with some champagne. And the whole song is just him, while he's trying to open the champagne, she's kind of talking to him. And it's like, hey, I heard what you did with getting that cone side for me. Like, you didn't have to do that, and he's just sitting here ruffling with the thing. But like, to make opening a bottle of champagne so entertaining for that entire duration of the song is just amazing. But I'll let you get the synopsis. I just love that, the simplicity of that key point of the song.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the champagne bottle, because to me, the champagne bottle is a representation of their relationship, how they're both, like, how it's hard to open up. And it doesn't happen until like the very end that they actually open up to each other about how they feel for each other. So it's Vanessa tries to convince Usnavi to stay, just because if he leaves.
But not because I love you. It's like, hey, it'll be good for everybody if you.
Because how she says it, it's like, it's different. But Usnavi's like, but you're leaving, and she's like, yeah, but all you gotta do is get on the 9 and you can see me. It's different for you because we gotta get on a plane to see you.
Yeah.
And it's,
here comes the disruption that I told you was gonna happen right now. She's opening the door. It's gonna get noisy.
And so just having this moment between them two, it's beautiful, and it sort of solidifies, not yet, but it sort of brings them closer together. And then we get to the next song, which is sort of a nice bookend to the song that they had prior, and it's When the Sun Goes Down.
Oh yeah.
And it's Nina and Benny talking about,
almost like the sun is setting on their story.
And it's just them confirming their relationship for each other, because Nina's about to go back to school, and Benny's like, I'm okay with us having a long distance relationship because you are the only one for me. And it's once again he brings up like, you know, you promise to always be there, and you promise to always love me, and she's responding in Spanish to him, and it's like it's nice to bring these two songs almost full circle.
Yeah, you know, and it's also, you know, before they're, you know, kind of worried about, you know, in the beginning of the show, they're worried about, you know, the small stuff that might take them down. Oh, what's your dad gonna think? She's like, oh, I'm a failure. What about college? What about this? What about that? Right? And so now she's decided to go back to school, and you know, now instead of worrying about every little thing, he's just like, yo, it's no big deal. Like, here's a calling card. You know, back when people used payphones and stuff.
Payphones. What are those?
Yeah, this is when the beeper was still going strong. You know, he's like, yo, don't spell the small stuff. Like, we'll talk. You'll come home for the holidays. Whatever. We'll work it out. You know, so now it's gone from, hey, every other thing is the reason why we can't be together, and now it's like, hey, we're gonna make it no matter what throws our way. So it kind of flips it on the upside.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of like right after this song, we have a moment between Benny and Kevin, where this is the moment where Kevin finally accepts Benny, and it's a nice interaction. And Benny mentions that, you know, I've always been there for you, but you've never been there for me. And it brings in, and like Kevin just has like this moment of realization that he's absolutely right. Like, Benny has always been there for Kevin with the business and with anything else that Kevin needs, but it wasn't reciprocal. And then we come up to Sonny and Graffiti Pete. Sonny pretty much pays Graffiti Pete to do something for him, and you find out what that is, and you'll find out about that later on in the finale. Now, the finale starts off with Usnavi playing a bunch of records, and I love it because like the song that the record is playing skips, and then it keeps on skipping, and it just gets lower and lower and lower. It's such a beautiful sort of opening, and it's almost like reminiscent that, hey, even though someone dies, life continues going on and on and on and on. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty sad.
And then also, you know, like the whole, you know, it's an older Spanish song. So it's like, you know, remembering the past while also continuing forward, type of deal. And, you know, of course, at this juncture in the show, you know, it's the end of the show, Usnavi's packing up. He's about to leave the country. He's about to leave everything behind, you know, so he's saying goodbye to everything he knew. He's also nervous for the future, but, you know, that future also kind of brings him back to his past a little bit because it's, you know, where his family's from, you know, so it's just a whole lot of him just kind of collecting his thoughts, reminiscing, you know, am I doing the right thing? You know, because like the song before this, not before Champagne was right before.
Right before the finale was When the Sun Goes Down, and then right before that was Champagne.
Yeah, okay, so right before that. So the last conversation we know that he had was with Vanessa, or one of the last conversations that we know that he had was with Vanessa. And so, you know, when the girl you've been crushing on this entire time is just like, hey, you could just take the train to see me. We could have a future here. And then, you know, he's leaving that situation like, all right, I feel like I'm in trouble, but I haven't done anything wrong. So what's the real issue, you know? And then, of course, at the end of Champagne, she's like, I'm not mad. I'm just too late, you know, like I'm going to lose you. So, you know, he's got all this going through his head. And it's just, that's what this finale kind of leads into, is just how he's processing just everything that's happening and what's about to happen moving forward.
So the song sort of blends into everyone singing, and everyone is singing like their own little piece of the finale. And Usnavi starts to think about, well, maybe he should stay. Maybe he should stay in this little corner of his world. And then he goes to the bodega, and the security fence is still up, because like throughout the entire show the security fence was sort of broken and whatnot, and you find out that Sonny had paid Graffiti Pete to make this beautiful mural of Abuela Claudia on the security fence. And Usnavi sees it and he knows what he has to do. He's like, nope, I'm staying. I'm going to stay for you. And it's a beautiful moment because he does the same thing in Hamilton. He says, I'm going to stay so I can tell your story. And it's literally the same way Hamilton ends.
Yeah.
With who lives, who dies, who tells your story.
No, 100%. And then like leading up to the scene where he kind of changes his mind, part of, what I was talking about before, where he's kind of, reminiscing on everything, one of the things that he kind of leads into after the chorus kinds of, they're singing, they're doing their part, right? And, his whole thing is like, there's a breeze off the Hudson, and just when you think you're sick of living here, the memory floods in, like, he's first off, if you've been to New York, the Hudson stinks. Like it's not a beautiful it's not a beautiful thing, you know what I mean? But like if that represents home to you, and you're about to lose that, then yeah, you're gonna romanticize it a little bit more. And those memories that are coming in and they're flooding in. So he's having doubts. And then the second he sees that, mural, he's just like, all right, well, there goes my plans. That's it. It's over. Like, I'm here. This is home to me, and that's just like that kind of nail in the coffin type of deal. Even someone, because Graffiti Pete is a nefarious character. He's not someone that Usnavi likes, because, Graffiti Pete. He's always causing mischief, tagging walls. Like, he's not someone who's not is like, oh, I'm glad you're around. You're kind of a pest to me, because in the beginning of the show, he's one of the people that, Usnavi's kind of like shooing off. And, for him to have that connection with that guy and be like, you know what, you're kind of like that annoying cousin that like, I don't like, but you're family. And I'd rather you be here than not, and so that's a really important moment.
And then like towards the end of the song, he keeps repeating, I'm home, I'm home, I'm home. And the song literally ends the way the opening ends. And it ends in Washington Heights. And I'm like, that's a great freaking bookend.
Oh yeah.
Great freaking bookend. And that's the show in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I mean the music, to me, this, the music from this show is just really really impactful because, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, you have moments in like Breathe or Everything I Know where it kind of hits you with that classic Broadway feel, but then you have like the new waves, like hip hop, you've got salsa, like no other show before In the Heights. After In the Heights, you had On Your Feet. It was the story, like you had all that after, but In the Heights was one of the first shows to really put forward like the modern Latin music, right? And so I think it was just very creative the way they did that. And if you look at the 96,000, if you look at Carnival De Barrio, if you look at the ending number, the way they layer the different voices to where like in 96,000, you've got Usnavi singing his thing. If you really want some bread and go ahead and whatever, he's singing that, and then you got Benny going For Real Though, and like you're laying these different stories, and you got Vanessa's thing, but we're laying them all in the same key, and you got all this stuff going on, but it somehow comes together, and that's just a theme throughout the show. So just the musical writing in this thing, not just the lyrics, but the music is just beyond any other thing that we've seen at this point, really with musicals.
And that's a perfect segue because, so Mitchell, what are your top 3 songs?
My top 3 songs, sure. I would have to say that the top 3 songs for me are definitely I Love the Club, I Love Champagne, and then That's tough. That last one's tough. I mean, I would probably say the intro, to be honest with you. Just because that's the first thing that hits you is the intro, and it sets up so perfectly, you know, anyone who's ever written a story or a play or anything like that, one of the hardest things to get to is the meat and potatoes of the story, because you have to introduce the setting, you have to introduce the potential plot, you have to introduce the characters, right? And so the way he was able to do that in this beginning number and do it so creatively, and it also sets you up for the ending, right? And so there's just, that first number has so much importance. It's, you know, and then of course the club, it, you know, as a salsa dancer, of course, I love the fact that there's salsa right there, you know, but also it's just the way they told the stories. And, you know, one of my favorite lines in the entire show is when Usnavi's, you know, kind of drunk, talking to that girl, trying to, you know, get his pride back after, you know, feeling a little bit squandered by Vanessa, and he's talking to this girl and she's not talking back, and he's like, oh, I get it, you're the strongest island type, well, I'm the Caribbean island type. And I just always love that line. And then of course Champagne, it's so simple the entire time. He's just doing, like, enacting, okay, cool, if you can sing a powerful song, or if you can cry, or if you can have that dramatic moment, of course that's the sexy thing everyone wants to see. But to do something so small and so subtle, but do it with such magnitude, is a very hard thing to capture. And that's what Lin-Manuel Miranda did with that champagne scene, because he's just, you know, I'm fine, open the champagne, you know, and this champagne is like, you know, almost like a character at this point that, you know, he's kind of brought to life when it's something that should be kind of simple. And so I just think the simplicities in this show and how he did it was just really, really creative and impactful.
My top 3 songs, of course, I'll be basic. I love 96,000. It is a beautiful song of hope, and a beautiful song of wanting, and a beautiful song of, like, just dreaming. Number 2 is probably Blackout, because just how Blackout starts and how it ends, you have all this chaos, and you have the fireworks, but then it ends with this beautiful moment between Nina and Benny, and I'm like, I love this so much.
Yeah.
So my top song is between 2 of them. Okay. And so I decided to go with the second one, because my favorite character in the show was Daniela. I just love how she just tears down people, but in a nice, polite way, because she's like, look, you need to do this or else. And yeah. I love No Me Diga, but I'm gonna have to go with Carnival De Barrio.
Yeah, that's a great one. You know, like I was waffling myself with that one.
Just how she is just addressing everyone. She has a no F's approach to life, but she's also a kind-hearted person, and it's rough interior, soft exterior. No. Rough exterior, soft interior. There we go. All right. So, what are your random thoughts on this show? Because there's a lot about the show that we haven't even talked about yet.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing for me with this show, now this show is now, like, and I'm talking about from its start on Broadway, not like the off Broadway and it being created, but, you know, the show came out on Broadway in 2008, you know, so we're looking at, you know, 13 years ago, this thing, you know, happened. And I think it definitely goes in the books as one of the best gateway musicals that you're going to find. And when I say gateway musical, I mean something that takes you away from the normal fray, right? So, you know, you have your classics, Phantom of the Opera, West Side Story, like those sort of things. But one of the first musicals to hit the scene was Spring Awakening. And Spring Awakening, was that before or after Rent?
So it'll go Rent, Spring Awakening, then In the Heights.
Okay, yeah. So Rent came out, right? And Rent was the first thing that kind of went, I mean, I don't like Cats, but like it went mainstream in like a good way. It's where it was so different than what you've seen before. And you also saw a lot of different types of music. And then you got Spring Awakening, right? Which also, okay, now we've got completely different styles of music, which opened you up to, you know, a lot of modern shows. And then you have Passing Strange, which did the same thing, right? So if it wasn't for, you know, shows like Rent, Spring Awakening, Passing Strange, we would not have Dear Evan Hansen. We would not have Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. We would not have a lot of these Legally Blonde, like a lot of these modern musicals probably wouldn't have happened as soon if you didn't have these gateway type of shows. And In the Heights, completely unique in what it did, and opened ourselves up for, you know, one of the major blockbuster musicals, Hamilton. You know, if you're not, to me, I think In the Heights is a better show in terms of music, right? But as far as impacting the world, Hamilton was it. If you don't know anything about Broadway, you know Hamilton, right? You know, I ask people all the time, oh, hey, do you know In the Heights? And they're like, no idea. Do you know Hamilton? They're like, yeah, of course. I'm like, same guy, you know? So just the impact it had there. And then, of course, you know, with me, you know, I got into acting a little bit late. You know, I wasn't like a big theater person in high school. Like I did a couple of one-act plays in high school for like some friends, but I wasn't like into it. And then I did some stuff after high school, but like it wasn't until like, you know, I met you at, you know, CSM, you know, getting into the collegiate years, where I started to get into it. But what allowed me to get into it more was something like In the Heights, because traditionally, if you wanted to be a lead role, you know, you needed to be at least 6 foot tall. You needed to have a certain look. You needed to have a certain type of, you needed to be a special type of baritone to where you could hit those full notes, but at the same time hit up to some tenor ranges, you know what I mean? So I didn't have any of that, you know, like I'm a decent singer. I can carry a tune, but like I'm not knocking anyone's socks off, you know, like I'm more of a character singer, if you will. And Lin-Manuel Miranda has had an amazing musical career, and he does not have a great voice, but he has a unique voice. You know, so when you hear him in the Heights, when you hear him in Hamilton, when you heard him on Psych, when you heard him on Sesame Street, or The Odd Life of Timothy Green, or like whatever it is he's doing, you're like, okay, he doesn't have the best voice, but I'm entertained and I like what I'm hearing, you know. And then also to add that hip hop Latin flavor to it, it's like, oh, a style that I actually can kind of relate to, not just like, oh, let me put on my proper pants, you know. And it gave hope for someone who's not the traditional theater person to want to pursue theater, because it's like, okay, there's new worlds opening up for people like me who don't hit the traditional trend. And so, you know, that's something that was just, you know, really important that I think In the Heights brought to a lot of people.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned Passing Strange, because In the Heights to you is what Passing Strange was to me. It was like, it's when you see a show that you can go, oh, I can play that part. Mm-hmm. It just has a special place in your heart for it. Now, one of the random things that I discovered about the show when I was researching it was when it was first premiered, not like on Broadway, not off Broadway, but like off Broadway at a university. Someone called it, it was like, oh, it's like Rent, but with hip hop music. And I was like, well, that's a fair assessment of it.
Yeah, it's a very basic level version.
So on a scale of A+ to F, and I know you can be very, very biased, and that's okay. So what would you give this show?
I mean, I told it, like, you know, you asked me this before, I'll say the same answer, man. A+. Like, there's no, the only critique I could give the show in terms of, you know, likability is there is a lot of Spanish influence to it. So if you're someone who hears someone speaking in Spanish and you're like, I don't understand what they're saying, or I don't know what, it could close off certain people, to who aren't that open-minded about it. But if you like one of the songs in Carnival de Barrio, right? Like they speak in Spanish a lot in that show, right? Or in that song, but they do a lot of translation, and you can get the gist of it, right? So he does a really good job of paying ode to, the Spanish culture without isolating, people on the outside, like the song Alabanza, right? If you don't know what Alabanza means, you could be lost, but it sets him up to beautifully describe what that means. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about the song, he's like, Alabanza means to literally raise this thing to God's face and, sing praise to it. And you wouldn't get that like, oh, okay. Or like if you have the moments with Nina and Benny when she's like, laying out the Spanish for him, like, okay, now we're bridging the gap to someone who's not familiar with the culture, and we're kind of letting them dip their toes in a little bit. So that would be my only thing, is that it could thwart off some people who are a little intimidated by the fact that it's so heavy in a different culture. And it's also very New York centric. Like I moved to New York and I lived in New York, and that's when I really understood a lot of the show, because before, when I first heard it, I'd never been to New York, and so there were certain connections I couldn't personally make. So he does go heavy-handed in those two areas, but at the same time, he's writing about what he knows, and that's why he was able to do it so well. So definitely A+. Yeah.
See, here's a funny thing, because this might literally be a first for the whole note. I agree with you. Mainly because the story, though it's simple, it is relatable and you can easily follow it. It is literally a slice of life play. Like you can take out all the music and just make it a straight play and it still makes sense.
100%.
The music just elevates it. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna have to agree with you. In the Heights is a lot better than Hamilton. And that's mainly because with Hamilton, there's a lot of historical things that he has to hit. Within the Heights, he's just telling a story. Yeah, that's it.
And I would say that Hamilton hit at a better time. Mm-hmm. So during 2008, 2009, if everybody remembers their history, okay, that's when Obama was getting into office. That's when we were going through a major market crash. That's when we were going through a housing crash, So I think without like a lot of those distractions, maybe it would have got a little bit more vibe. But, also, of course, we came a long way in terms of like social progression. But it wasn't at a heightened state as to where it is when Hamilton came out. So when Hamilton came out and he chose to use minorities to portray, Caucasian, founding fathers, that really made an impact because it was on everybody's forefront. So I think the timing of being around that movement and having that goes out definitely got it a lot more notoriety. And that's what helped, get it circulating a little bit better, when before it was like, okay, if you talk about, ethnic stuff, it's not that big of a deal in 2008, to where it's going to get national recognition, but if you do it a couple of years later, when we're starting to get into some Black Lives Matter movements, some, civil unrest, and, I just think culturally it struck at the right time to get more recognition.
So, Mitchell, sorry. What are your final thoughts for this show?
Final thoughts. It's a great show, man. It changed my life, man. And, like to expand a little bit further on the whole, like me not thinking of like theater could be a thing for me, coming out of high school, that's when I first heard about In the Heights. And, Lin-Manuel Miranda became an extreme influence in my life. And, he kept me pressing on that entertainment thing of, you know, me going from like, I'll never be able to be a lead in theater or whatever, to, you know, take it 10 years later, you know, In the Heights movie's coming out. I was lucky enough to work as an extra on that movie, and I was able to meet Lin-Manuel Miranda and, you know, get to share my experience with him, you know. So for me, this show just represents that if you put your mind on something and you kind of look forward, you know, I hate the dream board idea, you know, but when I think back to my successes in life, you know, Ricky Martin was also a big influence of mine. You know, I'm like, I'm going to meet him one day, you know, and I did, you know, and then there was a bunch of Latin artists that I was like, oh, I love their music so much. I would love to meet them one day. And I got to work with them. And then In the Heights, you know, like, okay, cool. I got to be on the set. You know, I got to meet Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, so that whole idea of, hey, if you really want something and you look forward to it and put the proper work in, you know, life kind of has a way it's working itself out in a positive way a lot of the time. So, you know, that's another thing that In the Heights kind of means to me. Is a representation of, like, yo, put the work in and believe, and some dreams can happen.
That's the word right there. Representation. That's the point. That is the point. That is the exclamation point for the end of this podcast. Representation. Whew. Mitchell, it has been an absolute joy talking about In the Heights with you.
Likewise, sir. Yeah, it's good seeing you, and it's also great to have this topic to talk about.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. I'll be giving my final thoughts in just a moment. All right, my final thoughts. This is where I give my opinion on the musical that we just discussed. Then, using a 5-star grading scale, I'll break down the musical into 5 different categories: music, story, comedy, drama, and overall replayability. And finally, I will give it an overall letter grade with the help of opera singer Marseille Alundra. In the Heights. Okay, so I'm gonna be very candid. It's been a while since I actually listened to In the Heights. And after I listened to it, I have a much better appreciation for it. I think it's because of Hamilton that I have a much better appreciation for the musical as a whole. It is original. It is pretty much a slice of life play or musical, and it's accessible, and it's relatable, and there's representation. That, to me, is probably one of the biggest things for a musical. The Latino community definitely loves this musical. As Mitchell even says, he loves it himself. I love it. Granted, I'm not Latino, but it is such a powerful musical, and it's a simple musical. Like, in terms of the story is very, very simple, but yet it's beautiful, and I absolutely adore it. This might be a first, but here we go. So hang on, I gotta get my notes. So for music, Lin-Manuel Miranda made a beautiful piece. I'm gonna have to give the music 5 stars. Sorry, it's true. For story, the story is very relatable. It is very easy to follow, and nothing is out of context. Everything makes sense. So for story, 5 stars. For comedy, Daniela literally runs the show. She is so hilarious. Her character is so funny. There are lots of moments where Usnavi and Sunny has their moments that are hilarious. Even Abuela Claudia has her moments that are hilarious. So for comedy, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. For drama, oh, like, you are literally thrown into the drama with the second song. And that whole storyline with Nina is a story that a lot of minorities that come from families that are, I'm gonna say, of a lower class, we understand that. Being the first person to go off to college and having that pressure to succeed, and then Abuela Claudia passing away, gutted me, gutted me. So for drama, 4 stars. Overall replayability. There is not a song in this show that does not make you want to, either want to get up and dance or put you in your feels. And Lin-Manuel Miranda does a very, very beautiful job with balancing that. Oh, replayability, 5 stars. So, my overall grade for In the Heights, this is gonna be a first, and I'm just gonna have to accept it. I'm sorry, I'll have to give it an A+. The story is beautiful, the music is beautiful. Everything about, there's nothing about this show that made me go, oh, they could have done this differently, or oh, they could have done this differently. Everything was well thought out, well planned, well crafted. So In the Heights gets an A+ for me. So, Marseille, hit that highest A. Beautiful. Now, In the Heights opened March 9th, 2008, and it closed January 9th, 2011, after 29 previews and 1,184 performances at the Richard Rogers Theater. Now, In the Heights was nominated for 13 Tony Awards, winning 4 for Best Orchestrations, Best Choreography, Best Original Score, and the coveted Best Musical. It also won the Grammy for Best Musical Show Album. And it was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize of Drama. Like, the show is monumental, it is groundbreaking, and it is definitely worth a listen to. So, come back with us next week when I will be reviewing Brooklyn, the musical. Love this show so much. I need to play Paradise at one point in my life. Granted, I'm a guy, Paradise is a woman, but who knows? Some director out there might get the idea. But until then, as always, stay beautiful, you amazing creature. Take care. Thank you for tuning into The Whole Note. The Whole Note is recorded at Roxy Regional Theatre in Clarksville, Tennessee. Intro and outro, The Bumble by Joshua Pyron, and was inspired by The Flight of the Bumblebee. Grading scale notes sung by Marseille Alundra. This podcast is edited and produced by me, Kenneth L. Waters Jr. Tune in next week and discover a new musical. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay amazing, you beautiful creature.